Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Unbelievers. I'm Cams, your host, The Unbeliever, and I'm joined by...
Barge, the Unbeliever.
Two unbelievers together discussing another unbeliever, Thomas Covenant, our Lord, The Unbeliever. And today we're looking at chapter 10, the celebration of spring, just as we head into springtime for real. And the clock change, spring forward for an hour. So I believe it's this weekend, isn't it? In the UK, anyway.
We'll be celebrating as well.
Aye.
A slightly different type of celebration, I think. But we'll see.
Aye. So we left off with Covenant up a tree in Soaring Woodhelven, having just challenged Baradakis, one of the heroes of Soaring Woodhelven. The Highwood rejected him.
That's right, so they tested him out basically by just chucking the stick at him, and he clutched at it with his hand with the two missing fingers, and it fell, and everyone said, whoa.
They did. It was a bit of a kind of cliffhanger, wasn't it?
Yeah, so yeah.
So the stick, I mean, let's give it its proper reverence. It's not just a stick, it's the Lomelialor, which is the magic stick.
Right, and it's made out of the same wood as the big stick, what's it called?
The Staff of Law.
That's it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're both made out of the One Tree, which is a title of a book that comes later.
I see.
Not a spoiler.
Right. So, so we start off kind of just as dramatically, huh?
It's like one of those old serialised TV movies with a cliffhanger. The Highwood rejects him. He is wrong in the land. And that's the end of the chapter. And it's resolved quite quickly, but in an interesting way, in a surprising way. So Covenant drops the stick, and then he picks it up and he threatens Baradakis with the stick. And at that point, his white gold ring seems to react. In a shower of white sparks, the club, as Baradakis' club, sprang into splinters. And Baradakis was flung back as if he had been blasted away by an explosion. So is this the second time that we've had an explosion from the white gold?
Right, but remember it was Baradakis that moved first. He drew a club from his cloak, and then he moved towards Thomas Covenant, and then he kind of defended himself, and Baradakis was kind of totally thrown back, and then Thomas Covenant kind of says, almost kind of, with an American accent, now why don't you tell me one more time about how this thing rejects me, man?
Yeah. It's quite a cinematic scene. So yeah, he's defending himself. Baradakis is the one who's displaying some violence, and it comes back at him.
Yeah, and then it's revealed that Baradakis kind of thought that TC might be part of the Grey Slayer. Because he talks about the wood itself, right? Not rejecting those possessed by the Grey Slayer.
Yeah, and it goes on to discuss about how when High Lord Kevin trusted the Grey Slayer, he was given priceless gifts of Orcrest and Lomelialor. And the tale says that these gifts were soon lost, but while the Grey Slayer possessed them, they did not reject him. It is possible for Despite to wear the guise of truth. Perhaps the wild magic surpasses truth.
Yeah, so, and it's also a big event because never in the memory of our people has a test of truth struck down higher branch of the Liliandrel.
Mm.
And that's kind of repeated a couple of times throughout. But it certainly shifts their position towards him, right? I mean, pretty dramatically.
Yeah, it basically turns it right round, 180.
Yeah.
And it does mention the paradox one more time about how he will save or damn the earth, which says it comes from a song in this instance. And then they look for his pardon. Hail, unbeliever. Pardon our doubts and be welcome in soaring Woodhelven.
Yeah. He's not so sure about this 180-degree turnaround.
No, we get that a bit later when he has a conversation with Baradakis, when he shows him some hospitality.
So Baradakis basically takes him up to the next level, to his dwelling.
Which he claims to have done because his dwelling is the easiest one to get to for one who's afraid of heights.
That's right. That's when Thomas Covenant basically queries him and wonders if he's still testing him, and said, "Yeah, why did you bring me here?" And
yeah, so he's very suspicious about Baradakis' motives, understandably.
Right, and then Baradakis kind of is much softer. He's now the host, and he seems to clearly indicate that he doesn't think Thomas Covenant is part of the Greyslayer.
Yeah.
He says, had you shown yourself to be a servant of the Greyslayer, it would have sufficed to capture you.
Yeah, so he's apologising for his violent outburst. Even had Covenant been a servant of the Greyslayer, it didn't justify violence. Because they do have the Oath of Peace, remember?
Yeah, it did seem quite strange, that Baradakis should have seemingly wanted to kill him. I mean, it seems strange to me, just in this land of hospitality. And I know the Tree Dwellers have kind of experienced stuff recently and all that, but it still seemed to be quite strange, So the Wood rejects him and then want to kill him.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know if they've had any other bad experiences. The only one that we know of is when Jahannam comes to visit in the recent past. So maybe they're just a bit nervous and afraid after that revelation because they trusted Jahannam when he first appeared.
Right, true, and I think Baradakis does later on, we'll come to it I'm sure, but he does say something along those lines that he acted impulsively or impetuously, I don't know. We'll come to that, I think, but yeah, right.
And Baradakis says to him, beside you I am as weak as a child, so he's observing Covenant's goodness, maybe, or power.
Power. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he recognizes Thomas Covenant's power. He says, and I felt your power in all the memory, and that's where he repeats, of the Liliandrel, no higher branch has ever been struck by the high wood.
Yeah.
But then he does say, in spite of my testing, you might be the Greyslayer himself come to turn all the life of the land into ashes. So that's that duality, that, the opposite possibilities of polarities and extremes.
Yeah, but Baradakis has faith, and he says, one day I may be wise enough to know what can be relied upon. Now I need time to understand. I trust you, my friend. At the last trial, you will not abandon us to death. And at that stage, he gives him a gift.
Also, just before that, it's quite interesting. Thomas Covenant says, why do you trust me? And he says, you're a man who knows the value of beauty.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That is nice, yeah. I've underlined that as well.
And then comes the stuff. Yeah.
So it's not Liliandrel, but it is... Does it have power of some sort?
Who knows? It feels good in his hands, though.
It says it's 6 feet long, so it's going to be as tall as Covenant, perhaps.
Yeah. It feels good, though. It felt pure in his hands, as if it'd been shaped from the healthiest wood by the most loving devotion.
Yeah. So he has the trust of the Wood Helven. He has the gift. And then they dine and rest.
And despite feeling as if his arms had been grappling with an angel all night, he felt remarkably refreshed in the morning.
Yeah. So we're ready for the next day to head off again back on the quest. He wakes up to Atiaran sitting in his room, waiting for him to awake. And she says, let's go. We've already lost the dawn of this day. And he seems on his descent down the tree much more confident than he was during his descent down Kevin's watch.
Right. I mean, but, it doesn't really say whether he has the help of the rope or not. But there's a nice little bit of interaction with a couple of kids who kind of are chasing each other, and they drop down from a limb nearly 20 feet above, and then kind of run around, and he joins in. Because one of the kids goes behind him and says, I'm safe. And he says, yeah, you're safe.
Yeah. And it does state the height here, that they're 200 feet above the ground.
Yeah, presumably there'd be ropes and things for him to go down the way he came up, huh?
Yeah, and I like to think that if the branches are thick enough to hold dwellings, that they would be thick enough to walk along fearlessly. Or maybe not fearlessly, but confidently. But yeah, that's a nice scene with the kids running around the tree.
Yeah, so then they say their goodbyes, and they're urged to be in time for the celebration, because there are great omens of hope for any who view that festival.
Yeah, so that's the first mention of the celebration. And Atiaran's been given instructions, directions, how to traverse through where they're going to, which is Andalane. So, yeah, they say their goodbyes and they head off, and they reach Andalane, or the Andalanian Hills.
There's an interesting point where uncertainly Covenant followed her example of bowing. So, that earlier resistance that he had to things, and even that time when he cursed the land, at the end of a couple of chapters ago, where he really didn't want to go on, and Atiaran said, I'm going to drag you.
Yeah.
So here there's a shift.
Well, I felt that when he was descending the tree as well, because it was a confident descent.
Right.
So his vertigo is, I don't know, latent now.
Yeah, it certainly didn't seem to be an issue coming down.
And he's rested and he's had food and sustenance.
Right, and then he seems, to be tuning into the land, because he gets, just as they set off, he gets to the stream, and then he likes going barefoot, and he's kind of sensing a change.
Yeah, it uses the word transubstantiate, which I thought was an interesting choice of word. That has a kind of religious element to it. Is to transubstantiate his flesh into the keener essence of Andalane, which he does by wading through the Mythal River barefoot, and goes through a foot washing.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah, nicely passed.
His soles are sensitive to the land's health. So whereas the soles of his feet were numb before, now he seems to be, he's not complaining about the danger that is posed by his returning sensation, as he was after the rape scene.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
when
right.
the sensations started to return, that seemed to be the only thing he could think about.
And it
Whereas
made him angry.
It did. And he seems to be... He's not bringing it up anymore, the author, so it seems to be indicating that Covenant's becoming more accepting and comfortable and relaxed.
That theme continues as they cross over into and the lane.
Yeah.
I mean, so much so that he's taken in with the beauty and wants to keep stopping, and he's feeling so alive.
Yeah, yeah. But it does say here that it was a dangerous loveliness. So we are reminded, not because it was treacherous or harmful, but because it could seduce. Before long, disease, VSE, despite, anger, all were forgotten, lost in the flow of health from one vista to another around him. So that's the narrator who's reminding us here. It's not Covenant.
But for Covenant, what a nice experience.
Yeah.
To have forgotten all those things, even if it's seductive, whatever. I mean, just nice for him to have that burden lifted and be taken in. And maybe that's what, what's his name, the guy who tried to kill him meant, someone who can appreciate beauty.
Yeah. Baradakis. So Atiaran mentions that they need to hurry because the celebration is coming. They don't want to miss it. Her will tolerated no delay.
Right, and she seems not to be taken in with the landscape the way he is, because she's in such anticipation of the celebration.
Yeah, and it's her land. Presumably she's been there before. Whereas for Covenant, it's his first time in Andalane.
Right, so at the moment they're going along happily. She's kind of looking forward to the celebration. He's feeling the joy and the beauty of this. And then there's a sense of sudden unexpected danger that kind of,
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And he's able to sense it, but she cannot.
Yeah. So he stepped on a patch of grass without warning, on a patch of turf that felt as dangerous as a pit of quicksand. A sense of wrongness. So that's the first time it happens, and he doesn't tell Atiaran about it the first time. But it happens again for a second time toward evening. And this time it's as if he stepped in acid, and he reacted in violent revulsion. And a yell ripped past his teeth before he could stop himself. So this is when Atiaran becomes aware of it. And we learn
aware that he's aware of something.
Yeah. And that she can't feel it. And it starts to happen much more often.
Yeah. She says, I have not the touch of a Radha Merrill.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's, her husband is a Radha Merrill.
Right. So Thomas Covenant clearly has a touch that is reminiscent, maybe, in some aspects of a Radha Merrill.
I don't know, maybe it just means that she doesn't have qualifications or lore. She's not lore-wise enough. I don't know what he's experiencing.
Oh, I see, he's just reading. Yeah, he's just reading.
Yeah,
he's just reading what's there.
So yeah, twice more the next day he felt convulsions of ill, until eventually his nerves are so frayed that he's feeling fearful of continuing. And on an impulse, he threw off one boot, removed his sock, placed his bare foot on the spot of ill. And this time, the discrepancy was even more surprising. He could feel the pain with his booted foot, but not with his bare one.
That's interesting, huh?
So bear in mind that the clothing that he's brought into the land won't be from the land.
Right.
Which would explain, perhaps, why he feels it through his boot and not through his bare foot, and why Atiaran doesn't feel it.
Possibly. Also, maybe because he's more sensitive to that particular aspect. Although, as we see later on, Atiaran is the one that explains it.
Yeah, well, he chucks his boots away and she says, "You'll need footwear before this journey has reached its end. I don't have sandals for you." And then he shouts at Fowl, "Is this how you're going to do it? First my nerves come back to life, then Andalane makes me forget. Then I throw away my boots. Is that it? Break down all my defences one at a time."
But, I mean, he then puts his boots back on.
Yeah, firmly, confidently, as if to say, "F you, Lord Fowl."
Yeah, right. I mean, I thought he could have, strung them over his shoulder and carried on barefoot for a while.
That was the image I had in my mind as well, especially in the springy grass of Andalane.
Right.
But no, he puts them back on and then he says the words "survive." And he laced his feet into his boots as if they were a kind of armour.
Yeah.
So then they march on, and he does seem to get a reprieve from the, what do you call them? The attacks on his feet, the illness, the wrongness. It seems to subside a little bit.
Right, and Atiaran, I think she was also impressed by what happened in the tree. And I think that seemed also to have maybe shifted her perception of him a little bit. But whatever it is, over here she's expressing more friendliness, more companionship than anything she had done since the beginning of their sojourn. And this was in the way that she urged Covenant along. So in the manner she was encouraging him, seemed to express more friendliness, basically. So something in her towards him seems also to be shifting. I mean, it's a very interesting and complex relationship, right? I mean, after all, she finds out that this is the man that raped her daughter, and she's not even able to go back and give comfort to her daughter, and she's duty-bound to lead him along to save the land. And then, she sees him interacting and things like that, and that's I don't know. She's seeing the human aspect of whatever that may be emerging from him too. But yeah, there's that other aspect too, and I wonder if it'll be addressed and how.
Yeah.
But anyway, she's warming towards him in some manner, it seems. Maybe it's the place, because that is a nice cheery place, and she's also in a good mood and looking forward to the celebration.
Yeah.
She's very joyful.
Yeah, she is. She grabs his shoulders and spins him around in a circle, crying joyfully, "We are here, we are in time." So they've reached the place of the celebration, and she calls out some exultation and reverence, "Banas Nimoram." Ah, glad heart of Andalane. So I guess that's some kind of lore that she's picked up from her time at the Lore's Rat. And Covenant's caught by the witchery of her voice. That's a good word.
Yeah, I spotted that, yeah. But this time he can't see what she sees.
That's right, yeah. He could not refrain from groaning in the first sag of his disappointment. He could see nothing to account for Atiaran's rapture. But she tells him what it's all about. It's the Banas Nimoram, the dark of the moon on the middle night of spring. Not in my generation has there been such a night, such a time of rareness and beauty. The celebration of spring, the finest rite of all the treasures of the earth. So we get to witness that.
Well, she says, do not measure the land by the standard of yourself. And she says, if you do not disturb the air with anger. So, we will see the dance of the wraiths of Andalin.
That could explain Atiaran's good mood and how she's been a bit more friendly towards Covenant, because she knows that anger could
correct,
upset
right.
the
That's
celebration.
A good point. Yep, good point. But then, as they're settling in, Atiaran's shoulders touched his with warmth, as if she had forgiven him. That's him feeling that up over there in that kind of space and all that. But yeah. And then it begins.
Yeah. So it's quite an interesting scene. We get some wraiths appearing, and they begin a dance, which becomes very... can't think of a word to describe it, really. It's
synchronized. It's as if they're all individuals, but yet they're moving collectively in this wonderful pattern that is never broken by a misstep. And it forms this kind of wheel of lights with a dark, unmoving center.
Yeah, that the glow of the light doesn't penetrate this dark centre. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah. And these are flames that appear and just dance about, and they're both really captivated. And then it seems as if the flames, the wraiths, seem to notice Thomas Covenant. And then it's absolutely clear that they're kind of pointing towards him.
Yeah. So the wheel starts to distort, and a bulge starts to approach Covenant. And as they get closer, the wraiths touch upon his ring, and they bow. They bow to his wedding band, or to Covenant. And he experiences no pain. The flames don't burn him. And he felt faintly the harmonies of the celebration song through his finger. So yeah, bear in mind that there is sound as well. We're hearing a song as this dance takes place. And the colours of the flames, yellow, orange, they change to silver white as they alight upon Covenant's ring.
So that's what seems to happen. They're attracted to his wedding band, they dance on it, and then the gold, or the flame changes colour. And once one is done, then moves on, and then the next comes, and then they get faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And he loves it. I mean, he joins in almost. He's like, before long his emotion became too strong to let him remain seated. He surged to his feet, holding out the ring so that the wraiths could light on it without lowering themselves.
Yeah, he's enraptured.
Yeah. But then, boom.
No, by the 7, this must not be, exclaims Atiaran. So we've covered this before, but I think when she says by the 7, she's referring to the 7 wards. It's not made clear what that exclamation means, but...
aren't there 7 lores?
Yeah, 7 wards of lore.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. No, that's what I thought it was. Yeah. Because I think it's, yeah. And then she says, that is the meaning of the L your feet have felt.
So in comes a dark wedge, makes its way towards the dance. And what we have here is a wedge of Urviles, Demondum's spawn. They are Urviles, Demondum corruption. He scarcely heard her. And the wedge starts to make its way into the circle of dancers And at that stage, the song disappears. It goes silent, but the dance continues. And the wraiths dance into the darkness of this wedge and then disappear. And we get a description of what these Urviles look like. They resemble the Wayne hymn. So you remember we discussed them from the Waybeats.
Without eyes. Yeah.
So they are relatives of the Wayne hymn. But these creatures are dark. They sound horrible.
Yeah, so it's basically a cloud composed of the head guy and then loads of others just kind of... they're coming through and they're just eating up the flames, huh?
Yeah, what do you mean by the head guy? You don't mean Lord Phil, do you?
There's a lead Urville, no?
Yeah, there is. He forms the head of the wedge.
Right.
Yep, you're right.
The wedge was composed of tall, crowded figures, so black flesh that no light could gleam or glisten on their skin.
Oh. Yeah, the Urvile was a master. Its might filled the bowl with a deep crumbling sound like the crushing of a boulder under huge pressure. In one abrupt exertion, Covenant's fire was stamped out.
Well, so what happens then is that the scene is happening, the Urviles are eating up the wraiths, and Atiaran kind of says, come on, do something. And he says, like, what am I to do? Like, what? You know? And then she starts kind of, I don't know what she starts doing. She keeps urging him, but he then has a kind of, I don't know, a feeling, an instinctive feeling that he's got to make for the centre of the wheel.
But yeah, that doesn't work out for him. He gets attacked. And he's about to be killed by a big red knife. And at that point, Atiaran shouts out, Melancurion Abatha. So we've heard that phrase before. She's called that out before. I think she calls it out when she's approaching Soaring Woodhelven, and they make mention of the fact that she's used powerful words. And those words are met with a reply from a voice to her west, Melancurion Abatha, and then a bunch of other magic words. So someone has come to their rescue. And it's not made clear who it is. He's just called the newcomer. But
hulking form, so it seems to be quite big.
And he takes the blade of the Urvile that was attacking Covenant and turns it upon the lead Urvile and drives it into its heart. And that seems to break up the wedge. And wraiths and Urviles all start to scatter. And then he calls it Covenant, go north to the river. I have released the wraiths. Now we will make time for your escape. Go. And Atiaran doesn't agree. She wants to remain to fight. But he says, no, you must go. Together we are not enough. Do you forget your task? You must reach the Lords. Must. Drool must pay for this desecration. So this newcomer knows of Covenant's mission. So we don't know who he is. We don't know how he would know of Covenant's mission, but he certainly knows. So they leave their packs behind, but Covenant does pause to pick up Baradakis' staff. And they run. And it's later on that we hear the sound of a short scream. Atiaran fell to her knees and dropped her forehead to the earth, weeping openly. He is dead, she wailed. The unfettered one, dead. Alas for the land. So now we know it's an unfettered one, which is the second time in the novel we've had the unfettered ones mentioned. So the first was the chapter The Dawn of the Message, In the Lore's Rat, those who follow and master both sword and staff, who earn a place in the warward and among the lore wardens, and who do not turn away to pursue private dreams in isolation, as do the unfettered. Those brave hearts are named lords. So the unfettered are the ones who master some of the lore at the Lore's Rat.
And pursue dreams in isolation.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so they go off on their own, do their own thing using the lore that they've learned thus far at the Lore's Rat.
Okay. Because she does, when Atiaran is saying to the unfettered one, oh, we need to stay because you're the only man.
The animals are not enough, so he's come with an army of animals.
Of animals, yeah.
Rabbits and badgers and wolves.
So he's pursuing his dream in isolation, but maybe from other humans.
Yeah.
Other men. But anyway, she feels guilty, huh? She feels, I don't know. She sobs and raises her face to Covenant. Take your staff and strike me, unbeliever.
Yeah. That's harsh.
But I mean, it's so the celebration of spring seemed to be this kind of major event at this very critical time of mid-spring and the moon, and she says at one stage that the flames, the
wraiths,
they need to complete their dance.
Yeah.
Because, it needs to be completed, and so they're not going to do anything. So then, presumably, this never would have happened in the past, right? So, presumably, if this is an annual thing, it happens, and if you're lucky enough to see it, then it's great. But it's never been disrupted in this manner, presumably.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I guess, she was so looking forward to it and feels that, I don't know, maybe them going to see it called upon the wedge.
Yes. And this might be why he was sensing the pools of ill in the grass, because they were following him, I guess.
But it's not clear to me that, the wedge was going for them.
No, it's not.
It attacks them only when they decide to go and do something about it, right? When he runs to the centre, and they're going for the flames.
So yeah, the wedge was already eating up the wraiths. It wasn't attacking Covenant, but it's Covenant's presence there what has brought the wedge in the first place. And also, where did this unfettered one come from? How does he know of Covenant's journey, his mission, where he is, where he's going to be?
Right, and Lord Fowl, it's not clear in any way that Lord Fowl had any entry into the land before Thomas Covenant. So, right?
Well, no, I think Lord Fowl was defeated by Beric Halfhand.
Right.
Then went into hiding, I guess, or he had to grow back his powers before he could make himself known again.
Right, so he hadn't made himself known before the arrival of Thomas Covenant.
I don't believe so. Although Jehannam had arrived at Soaring Woodhelven, but that was after Covenant's arrival in the land.
Right. So it's not clear that Lord Fowl had any inroad into the land before Thomas Covenant.
Well, I don't think
since his exile.
No. I don't think he was exiled from the land. I think he was just reduced to a state where he was unable to to do anything. He had to hide away and grow his strength back again after his defeat at Berrex.
Right.
I don't think he left the land.
Right.
I think he was just defeated, but not killed. That's what makes me think of Lord Voldemort. I don't know if you've read Harry Potter. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have. But that's what it makes me think of. Is when Voldemort attempts to kill Harry Potter's parents. Oh no, he kills Harry Potter's parents. When he attempts to kill Harry Potter defeats him somehow and reduces him to a state of... He becomes like a defeated spirit with no body of his own. And he has to hide away.
So, would you equate the Harry Potter series with the current series that we're looking at? Interesting question.
Equate? No, but I think as tropes go, as fantasy tropes go, that are based on creation myths and that kind of thing, I think it's no surprise that we see these kind of tropes in different books. I mean, I'm not saying whether J.K. Rowling would have read Thomas Covenant. I have no idea. But even if she hadn't, then, I'm not surprised that we see these creation myths coming up.
But that,
Sauron, Lord Sauron in Lord of the Rings is a similar kind of deal as well.
Right, and I'm sure, Joseph Campbell could reduce them to their bare-bone components.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what do you think? Do you think there are going to be consequences of this ritual of spring not having been completed?
It seems kind of clear that there must be.
And the Urviles that came to attack the celebration of spring, what could have been their motive? Because I'm thinking about how Covenant was given his mission specifically by Lord Fowl, so it's not in Lord Fowl's interests to prevent his reaching Revelstone, because he sent him there, so why would he be sending evil minions to thwart his journey?
Yeah, right, so then that suggests the wedge was out to kind of disrupt the celebration of spring rather than go for Covenant.
Yeah.
And so Atiaran's guilt was then maybe misplaced. I mean, sadness, sure.
Yeah, but that is a very powerful last paragraph where we get her guilt, and it's as if the tables are turned. It's Covenant who leads Atiaran out.
Oh.
And he says throughout his sleepless night of their northward trek, he could do nothing about it. So Atiaran is beside herself. And yes, and Atiaran regained control of herself and pulled away from him, that she accused him of something. So maybe now she's going to put this onto Covenant. I guess we'll find out as we read chapter 11, The Unhomed.
Well, she has intuition. I mean, she clearly doesn't take things out on him, as it were.
No.
But, I mean, yeah.
She's a very strong constitution.
Yeah.
And she's able to show obedience to duty over her own emotions and needs and wants.
Right, for a mother to be there in this close proximity to the one who raped her daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, that, and having to take care of him and things like that, yeah. I mean, that's... something has to give at some stage, I guess.
Aye. So, a good chapter. Anything you wanted to ask me?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, I mean, so this land seems to have a lot of order about it. Right? I mean, it's got the lore, it's got traditions, it's got rituals, it's got setup. Yeah. Can you think of any other aspects of life that might have that, as far as you're concerned?
Rituals certainly would be in the Freemasons.
Right. And order.
And the army, being in the army
right.
as well.
So two major things, right? Yeah. And you've always liked that. I mean, look at your server and the organization of your personal documents, your diaries, your photographs. I mean, order is a really big thing.
Yeah, it is for me,
Yeah. So, I mean, order, so if order is a big thing, order being threatened is also potentially a big thing, right?
Yeah, mentally speaking, it is, yeah. I like to have rituals and routines and order and things to be where they should be, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. I mean, even in that aspect, even in the kind of grammar Nazi kind of hat, right? I mean, that's also kind of a bit of a thing, right?
Yeah, well, I wonder if it's got anything to do with pathology, of autism or ADHD or something like that. I know we like to throw these things around, but having seen some of that in my family, it makes me wonder whether it's part of who I am as well, and that's what leads me to find comfort in certain rituals and routines.
Right, yeah. I mean, and also, of course, perhaps your experience of disorder has been very upsetting and very distressing as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's very distressing. Maybe if I think back to my accident, for example, which was obviously a major turning point in my life. I was 17, fell off a cliff, almost lost my leg. At the time I was serving in the military, and my life was quite clearly mapped out. You know, I had a career in the military and I was doing well, and then all of a sudden it was taken away through something beyond my control, and I had to rethink. And I mean, that's obviously how we met, because I ended up at St Andrews University doing a degree as a result of this accident. And so I was actually thinking about it today, because I read Stoicism, wisdom, every day, a certain page from a book called The Daily Stoic. And in that book, in today's reading, it talked about how one can either give in to circumstances or how one can stand up and face it. And it made me think of the first time that I ever heard the word stoic, which was when my consultant orthopaedic surgeon described the way in which I dealt with my recovery as stoic. And he wrote this in some report, I think, that went to the solicitors or to my application for disability or whatever it was. But I remember having to go and look it up because I'd never heard the word before.
So what do you understand it to mean with regard to yourself then? What did the doctor mean?
That I was able to deal with adversity and not let it hold me back. I was able to make the best of it and still achieve something positive, which I did do. I went back to school and got my exams and ended up at uni whilst going through all of that surgery and recovery.
Right. Another sort of disorder is, say, when one is emotionally messed up, say because of a relationship.
Okay.
right? I mean, that's also a loss of order in a sense, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. So, I mean, and if you think back to that, I mean, that's also been quite a major experience of that lack of order.
Oh yeah, I think we all experienced that. I mean, I still get it now, you know, fall out with my wife and then feel like my world's crumbling and get over it and patch it up.
Right. So that, yeah, right. But I mean, because this is zooming in on your particular experience of whatever, right? So it's what you sense when you feel the order to be threatened and what you do to, I don't know, mitigate it or not go back there. But I mean, if you think to like when you came back from Odessa, so that kind of lack of or loss of order and mental stability and because of emotional shit going on.
Yeah, that whole year abroad was probably the longest period that I've been through a situation of distress, I suppose. Was that the word that you used?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right.
I mean, going through the whole leg recovery thing, which went on for longer than my year abroad, but I still had home comforts and all of that, whereas living abroad for the first time in a country that's very different from what I was used to and going through some of the emotional things I went through, including the low self-esteem that I experienced because I thought at that time my Russian was pretty good and it turned out it wasn't so good. At least in terms of being able to communicate on a normal day-to-day level. You know, my reading comprehension was decent and all that, but conversationally that was tough. But, you know, in terms of stoicism, I didn't quit. I kept going. I got through it. And sure, it will have left its mark, but it's turned out to have been one of the most positive things that I've done in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think the times of greatest growth are the times that are experienced as the toughest times.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, for sure.
I think we all know that.
But it's yeah. The challenge sometimes can be the willingness to go back to previous states of mind that one hasn't revisited in order to release whatever was then bound, tied up and locked away, you see?
Yeah, but I think I do revisit these things often through my creative output, my journals, my videos, my shares in AA meetings. I think I've covered it all. And I like to use the creative act and also reading literature, watching movies. I think art in general as a creative pursuit and as a thing to consume is a pathway to healing for me.
Covered it all? You reckon you've covered it all?
Probably not, no.
Right.
But I certainly don't feel that I've shied away from anything. And I think that's perhaps why this last year, maybe 2 years even, since I started healing after getting rid of the post office, I've been on a trajectory of healing and growth. And I've also been creating more during that period than I ever have before. And I think there's a connection there. There's a really good book I would recommend to you by Rick Rubin, music producer, called The Creative Act. And he talks about the healing power of the creative act. And the way that he discussed it really resonated with the experiences that I've had over the past couple of years. And there are some great YouTube videos of him in discussion with other musicians, etc., where they go deep into these topics, and it's absolutely fascinating to me. So, maybe we'll put this out as a Patreon bonus or something. I don't know if it fits on the back of the podcast, but it might be interesting to put that out as a bonus.
So, just one more chapter next week, huh?
Yeah, I think so. The Unhomed is... No, it's not that long.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. I think one chapter a week's a good cadence.
I think so, yeah.
We get to meet a very important new character in this chapter, so I'm looking forward to that.
All right.
It moves on quite a pace, doesn't it? It's quite a fast-moving book, certainly compared to some of the next ones.
You mean, right, some of the next ones in the first trilogy?
No, I think later on is when it slows down a bit. Second trilogy and then onwards. There's a guy commented on my podcast announcement video and said, "Oh, fantastic! We've done this as a read along before as well." And I looked back at some of his channel, and he's got a video on each of these, all 10 books. So obviously I'm not going to send you the link because it's Spoiler City, but it's quite interesting that this is a channel I'd never seen before, because I thought I'd been through all of the Covenant stuff on YouTube. But no, and someone has found me, so that's good. I've set up a read-along. Yeah, we should do this announcement at the end of all of them, because I've had to record an extra bit to add on to the ones we've already recorded. So if you'd like to follow along as we read, then please go to our new URL, which is theunbelievers.co, and I've set up a read-along using the StoryGraph app. So I'll put a link in the show notes to this, and you can go and find it. But there's a read-along for Lord Fowl's Bane already set up, and it gives the option of having discussions on each chapter as we go. So as these episodes come out, there will be a new forum inside of the read-along on the StoryGraph that you can use to come and chat with us about the book.
And give us your feedback, impressions.
Yeah, we'd love to hear how you're enjoying it. If you're enjoying it, or if you're not, we'd like to hear that as well. It's not for everyone, but I don't imagine anyone will have listened this far.
I don't think so, no. No.
No, I'm sure we've already lost those people. So yeah, come and find us there at theunbelievers.co. And if you can give us a rating, that would really help. This is a brand new podcast, and the most powerful thing you can do to help us grow is to go into your podcast app and give us a rating and write a review. Just one sentence would do, just to push this up and let people find it, because we're new and we would appreciate your support in that way. If you feel that you would like to contribute in a more tangible form, we have set up a Patreon page where you can go and subscribe to one of the tiers that we have set up so that you can support us with a monthly contribution. That would really help us to pay for hosting and all of that fun stuff that we've had to outlay as a new startup. So there's an option, if you want to support us, that would be much appreciated. So on that note, anything to add before we go, Barge?
No, have a good week, folks, and see you next time.
Yeah, Melanchurion Abatha.